Hi, I'm Erin Barber, and in today's vlog, I'll be looking at my coaching process and how I train athletes. So just to give you some background on the athlete in this video, it's a novice endurance cyclist with over 3 years experience in strength training that wants to improve their lower body strength for their cycling. So current literature indicates that strength training can improve time performance for endurance athletes, particularly in running and cycling. And it is suggested that low rep, high weight can increase strength capacity to improve mechanical efficiency through pedal stroke for cyclists. So as a coach, I take the stance of using social learning theory, by which an athlete observes the movement and then repeats the movement after me. So as you can see here, I'm taking the athlete through some warm-up exercises that are going to be useful for the weight training they do. So I'm taking this client first through a gorilla squat just to work on triple extension in the hips, knees and ankles and get the all the right muscles working for their squats and Romanian deadlift. So as you can see, the athlete struggles here, so I cue them to take a slightly wider stance so they have better depth in their hamstrings. Through here, I'm currently guiding and cueing the athlete to ensure they're keeping the heels driven down as much as possible and lifting their chest up whilst completing the squat to try and get a full range of movement. After performing the gorilla squats, I now take the athlete through stick good mornings. Now this is to begin working the hamstring muscles for Romanian deadlifts that they will be participating in later. So my thought process for this is to complete exercises that mimic the weight training they will be doing later so that the correct muscles are activated and lengthened and they have warmed up appropriately for the movements they will be participating in later on. After the gorilla squats, I take the athlete through the next warm-up exercise, which is a stick good morning. Now this mimics the movement of a Romanian barbell deadlift, which they will be completing later on. I begin by showing the client / athlete from the front and then taking it to the side so they can observe the movement from different directions so they know how to move properly. From here, I then allow the athlete to perform the exercise on their own, cueing them to keep a soft bend in the knees and draw back from the hips, as this is a primarily hip hinge movement. Now, as they're lowering into the good morning, I notice a slight flexion in the lower spine, so encourage the athlete to push their hips back even further, sticking their bum away from their body. And as we can see, that reduces the flexion in their lower spine. Reflecting back on this video, I believe as a coach, I would perform better by viewing the athlete from different angles, thereby noticing if they had any issues with the movement from both the back and the front as opposed to just looking from the side. Now I am going through the back squat with the athlete, showing them to complete the exercise first at a lower weight before we load the bar. Okay, so here I'm cueing the athlete to rest the bar at the top of their back. Take a stance slightly wider than hips distance if comfortable, and if necessary, feet slightly turned out. From here, I encourage them to take triple extension of the hips, knees and ankles and try and bring the thighs down to parallel with the floor to get a good range of movement, keeping the chest up and back flat and ensuring there is no flexion in the lower spine. I have also encouraged the athlete to stand from the side to get a good view of this movement. However, again, upon reflection, I think it would have been wise to tell the athlete to move around so they could get a good visual perspective from different angles. Now I'm allowing the athlete to warm up through the back squat without any weight on the bar before loading it to ensure that their range of movement is appropriate. So once I've allowed the athlete to get into position, I provide minimal cues until they begin to complete their first few reps. I notice here there is a slight lower back flexion as they go below parallel. So here I instruct the athlete to just keep the thighs at parallel to avoid that slight flexion in the spine. And as we can see, it improves as they begin to not squat as deep into the movement. And then from here, I'm instructing and just explaining to the athlete what was happening so they know to adjust the movement for future reps. In line with some of the current literature, I programmed a low body session based on low repetitions and high resistance for this endurance athlete. So they've been focusing on blocks of exercises in straight sets of 4 sets with 6 repetitions. This allows the athlete to complete a higher, heavier weight with fewer reps and leading to less muscle soreness after the session so they can complete their cycling. Okay, from here I move on to the next movement, which is a Romanian deadlift. Again, taking the social learning theory and showing the movement before the athlete performs it. So here, as you can see, I'm cueing that this is a hip hinge movement with a soft bend in the knees and informing the athlete to keep a nice flat back, shoulders drawn back. Okay, we can see from here that hip hinge movement, instructing the athlete where the end position should be, and then driving back up through the low body up to a standing position. I complete this movement a few times so the athlete gets to observe how we should be moving. However, again, I notice here I have not encouraged the athlete to move around me so they get to observe from different perspectives and see how the body moves from different angles. This is definitely an improvement that I could bring about in the future. I have chosen to perform a Romanian deadlift after the back squat so that the athlete gets a full lower body training session. This way they're getting both posterior and anterior lower body muscles working, with the anterior dominant with the squats and posterior with the Romanian deadlifts. From here you can see I move around the athlete to ensure that their range is competent from both the frontal, side and back planes. Again, I ask this athlete to perform 4 sets of 6 repetitions at a heavy weight in line with current research. Upon reflection of this training session, I believe that I could have improved by allowing the athlete to think more from themselves. So one prime example here of allowing them to learn in different ways is that I have not encouraged them to move around me as I perform the exercises so they get to see different perspectives of where the muscles and where the body should be during different movements. As well as this, although I encourage using the social learning theory throughout my practice, this means that there is less focus on the athlete developing their own movement patterns. So I am allowing the athlete to copy me without a focus on how they move naturally as an athlete. I've also noticed that as a coach, I spend less time than I should reflecting with the athlete on how they felt after the exercise. So I could definitely improve by talking to the athletes after they have completed the exercise so they can tell me how they feel, which muscles they felt worked, so that I can reflect on this and then give cues from these points.